Welcome back to the Stag Raw podcast. Of course, looking at people that are living life less ordinary. One of the things that drives me in life is improving people's lives. So when I was going out for a run the other day down in the Port Hills of Christchurch, and I saw Amy Whitehead going over the bridle path saddle, I was like, what is that about? She was wearing a bright red cap with Adventure for Dementia. So when I got to the bottom and there was somebody setting up a gazebo, I asked, who's that and what are they doing? So what Amy is up to, she's embarking on an adventurous running challenge in 2023 to raise awareness of dementia in New Zealand and to help raise funds for Dementia Canterbury, who offers support for families affected by dementia. Now in this podcast, I mentioned how my mum's involved with the Laura Ferguson Brain Trust there in Christchurch. From what I understand, they share a similar building. My grandmother suffers from dementia, and of course I've had a few head knocks myself. That's why we've talked to people like Dr. Matthew Phillips, and we've touched on the likes of traumatic brain injury and brain conditions all along. So it ticked quite a few boxes. The challenge that Amy's doing is the infamous Pipeline of Pain route in the Christchurch Port Hills. It's a distance of 5.2 kilometres, and there's 465 metres of running uphill involved there. But it's not just once. That was January. Twice in February, 3 times in March, and so on and so forth. So she did 10 trips of that the other day. What's that? 52 Ks, 4.6 Ks vertical. And so then, of course, when it comes to December, they will have done 62.4 Ks and 5,580 metres of elevation for a total of 405.6 kilometres and 36,270 metres of climbing for the whole year. That's pretty special. The running challenge is in memory of her aunt, Joanie Sommerville, who lost her battle with dementia in January 2022. So right now, the Give a Little sitting just over $6,000. If you've got some spare funds that you'd like to put the way of Dementia Canterbury, I'm sure Amy would greatly appreciate that, and she has the aim of cracking the 10 grand. So hopefully this podcast can help her to reach that. Make sure you're sharing this with your friends. This is a shorter one. Of course, Amy's doing something absolutely wonderful, improving people's lives. I'm hoping to improve her life and her cause by bringing on this podcast, and it's something just that little bit different. Hope you enjoy this one, and if you haven't already subscribed, you can do that and leave a 5-star rating. That would be much appreciated. Right, let's get into this short and sweet conversation with Amy Whitehead. Enjoy. Beautiful. So on Saturday morning, my parents live at the just beneath the gondola there in the Heathcote Valley in Christchurch, and I decided I was going to go for a run up the Summit Road. And I got to the top of Bridle Vale, and all of a sudden there was this group of people coming over looking very serious. And in the front there was this wonderful woman wearing a hat that had Adventure for Dementia. And I was like, wow, what that's about. Luckily, when I got back towards my home, there was someone setting up a gazebo, and they said, that's Amy Whitehead. You should look her up on Facebook. She's doing this month 10 trips over the bridle path, but you're going one more and one more again with 2 months to go, Amy. How cool. How did this all start?
So this Adventure for Dementia is raising money for Dementia Canterbury, but I kind of wanted to do something a little bit epic. It's in memory of my aunt Joanie, who passed away from dementia in 2022, and I thought, well, why don't I just pick a lap in the Port Hills, and I'll run a lap a month and add a lap a month. And so I was like, oh, that seems pretty achievable, having not really thought this through. So it's a 5-kilometre loop. So, January was 5 kilometres, February was 10, March was 15. But it's also 480 metres of climbing in that loop. So yeah, it's turned out to be a much bigger thing than I had thought. But yeah, super fun. So yeah, so Saturday, 10 laps, was 51.5 kilometers and 4,836 meters of climbing.
And how does that feel now? How does it feel now? Like,
today's good. Yesterday the stairs were atrocious.
Yeah. So, start of this year, I met Ian Evans down in Wanaka and did his Roy's Peak on Friday with him. And while we were up the top, we looked over to Hawea and he said, "Oh, they'll be getting up Corner Peak about now as well." And Turn the Corner sort of happened. Was there any crossover or inspiration from that, or that's something that's sort of gone, oh, that's cool too?
Yeah. That's I didn't find out about that until after I'd already started this. The inspiration for my thing came from a Dirt Church radio podcast that I listened to probably a couple of years ago down with Madeline Collins, who had done a similar thing in Auckland, I think, during one of the lockdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had kind of at the time thought, that's bonkers. Why would you do something like that? But then this little seed was planted in my head. And I was like, wow, maybe one day, but I needed a reason to do it. And doing something for Dementia Canterbury was, a nice kind of thing. It sort of follows, I guess that because dementia is a bit of quite a progressive disease, you start off kind of relatively fine, but get worse over time. And I thought that this kind of challenge sort of mirrored that in some respects. Like, the first 5Ks the first month was pretty easy. But it's just got bigger and bigger and bigger as we've gone through the year.
So what sort of adventures did your life look like before? Like you said, you were a listener of Dirt Church Radio. Those guys are classic. What was going on about the Cargill, Crush the Cargill?
Absolutely.
What's that? That's 100 Ks or a mile, that one?
I don't actually know what the distance of it is. I keep seeing them talking about it, and
it's long.
Look that up. Yeah, it's long. Yeah.
What did your adventures look like?
So I grew up in Te Anau, and so had spent a lot of time out and about in the hills doing stuff as a kid, but kind of fell out of it really until lockdown, when I was like, shit, I need to do something. So I started running.
Mm-hmm.
In that first kind of 2020 lockdown, and then it spiraled out of control quite quickly, as these things often do.
So where did you end up? Did you run the Crater Rim? Did you have Valley Ultra? Or
so I was originally going to do the 2020 Motatapu Marathon.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But then that was cancelled because of COVID. So I ran my own round the Crater Rim, which was the longest I'd ever run by myself on a stinking hot day. But had such a great time. And then, did Valley Ultra the following year and Kepler. Which was fantastic. Loved Kepler.
And what was that like, being back home and climbing up those mountains? I remember growing up seeing in the newspaper, like, who the hell are these people? Sometimes it come out and like some old mate who's been a musterer has just won the Kepler, and like, that is fast. And they're running up a hill.
Yeah, so my dad ran the first Kepler way back in 1987, and which was pretty cool as a kid. Like, but I was like, how do people do that? I never considered that I'd be able to do it myself. And then my family were really involved with the race when I was growing up as well. So I was always out doing aid stations or on the radio or doing that. So it was super cool to go back and see all those people still running the event.
Mm-hmm.
It was a stinking hot day. It was like 30 degrees. So it was pretty brutal. That last 30 Ks.
Yeah. Were you ever involved with cross country at school?
Not really.
Not really? I was going to say that track in Te Anau was absolutely vicious.
Yeah. I mean, I did it, but not voluntarily. Running wasn't really my thing as a kid.
Yeah, so you've got a bit like me with hunting and running, adult onset adventuring.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so what is it sort of exclusive of this challenge you're in right now? What has it provided you? Like, say you found it and fell deep into it during the lockdowns of isolation, and it was kind of like the thing that you could do by yourself, wasn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. And I mean, from where I live in Christchurch, I can run out the front door and be on the Port Hills pretty quickly. So it was a nice escape kind of back into nature. not being stuck in the house in the backyard. And it's a huge mental health thing for me as well, like just being able to get out and kind of lose some of those frustrations of the day out in the trails and things. Means a lot to me. So and I think that's kind of where it's one of the reasons it's sort of become such a big part of my life, is it's super important in that respect.
Nice. So who was the group that was with you? How have they come along and come and joined you?
Oh, it's such a random group of people. Some of them are people that I train with. So I am coached by Team CP, who are like an endurance coaching group in Christchurch. There was a good crew of those guys out on Saturday. One of them, Ken, is phenomenal. He came out with me. We hadn't really met before. He came out with me in May, and he's run every single lap since May, which is super cool. And I'm so grateful, because some of those laps have been hard, and it's just been the two of us. So,
do they do mountain biking as well, coaching?
Yeah, mountain biking, kayaking.
Yeah, there's been 2 podcasts in a row that someone's been part of Team CP.
Yeah, they're such a good crew of people, so it's great to have them along. Then some of them are just random people I've never met before, to be honest. I've sort of been putting events up on Facebook, and so every month, just some random people will turn up, which was pretty fun. Further Faster, who are one of the local outdoor shops here, were also running a competition on Saturday. So they gave away, they hid on the route some entries to the Crater Rim Ultra, Valley Ultra, and Mission Mount Summers. So 3 big Canterbury races. So there were a whole crew of people that came out looking for the golden tickets, which was pretty entertaining, because they were very well hid.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So next month there's 55 Ks, right?
55 Ks and 5,300 meters.
Yeah.
Or something.
And so I've sort of looked at your Strava route. We're on the Heathcote side. When are you going along the pipeline? Down or up?
Going up the pipeline.
Going up the pipeline, right.
Yeah.
And then it's on the other side. Are you coming up a pipeline or down the pipeline?
So go down the bridle path,
and
then up the Stanhelms, which is on the opposite side of the valley.
Yeah.
So kind of not really on the pipeline.
So you have 2 sort of spurs on your Littleton side, is that right? And you drop through
the
valley.
You kind of drop down and through the valley along the pipeline, and then back up. Yeah.
Oh, good fun. So what sort of banter has happened along these walks?
Oh man, where the chats have been wide ranging.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a couple of guys who are quite keen on hunting, so there's a lot of chat about where to go to get goats and various other things, or what's happened on their latest hunting trip. We've quite a range of nationalities. So particularly at the moment, there's an Irish guy and a French guy who are talking a lot about the rugby. Lots of discussion about all things running, because that's why. But yeah.
Was Saturday the worst conditions? Like that southerly was pretty gnarly. Like
yeah, it was pretty grim. February was really hot. It was 27 degrees at 7:30, but it was only 2 laps, so it was kind of doable. April it poured down for 4 laps, but again, it was only 4 laps, so it was fine.
Did they become treacherous? Were there a few slides going on?
Yeah, it wasn't so bad then. It's been really wet over the winter, and so basically, if you didn't have poles, you couldn't stand up in places. Like it's like being in the sheep yards. It's sort of ankle deep mud.
Yeah,
it's pretty festy. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's funny you bring up the goats there. The NZDA, of course, are trying to have a national goat shooting competition. So it's good. Now, I just saw you on LinkedIn, and are you involved with Landcare Trust or?
So I work for Landcare Research.
Yeah, Landcare Research.
And largely in the kind of pest space, so trying to figure out, how to deal with stoats and rats and deer and goats and pigs and all of the pesty things.
Yeah,
looking at impacts on native stuff.
And so, reading a summary, you looked at how biodiversity was impacted by the removal of, was that pastoral animals or feral animals. I think it was the title.
Oh, yeah. So we did a study, this was a few years ago now, looking at sort of the impacts of tenure review.
Yes.
And so when you take pastoral animals out, so I think it was in those cases largely sheep and cattle, what happens to the vegetation in the other mammal communities. So, do you end up with more rabbits or hares and hedgehogs and those types of things? Generally, it's, to be fair, I'm stretching back a long way because it was 2014, I think that came out, but you end up with more shrubs, but the kind of mammal communities change. So you end up with fewer rabbits because rabbits like quite short grass. But they get replaced by hares. There were more possums because they tend to be hanging out in the kind of more scrubby stuff. Can't really remember what happened with the hedgehogs, but I suspect there were probably more of those too.
Yeah, it was something that a couple of years ago I hadn't realised that within the Tusker country there is a vast array of possums up there. Having talked to some pest control people of possum management in the Tusker, I was like, "Are you for real?" It's like, "Oh yeah, it takes a long time to find them all and clear them out." Yeah,
yeah, and hedgehogs too. Like hedgehogs go really high, up to right up into the alpine zone.
And that I guess it is a threat to snails and stoats and not stoats, skinks and things like that. Is that what a hedgehog is after?
Yeah, and like in the braided river systems, they will take birds' eggs.
Yeah, nesting sites.
Yeah, they're real bad for river birds.
Yeah, and the ducks you looked at, was that feel or something different?
It was feel. Yeah. That was super cool. So I worked for Doc for a couple of years down in Fiordland on feel, and then actually did my PhD on them as well. So looking at kind of impacts of predator control. So trying to figure out, what the predators were in Fiordland. Basically, stoats were the only things. Down there we had a few weka predations, but we don't have issues with cats or ferrets in Fiordland, so pretty lucky. But basically if you don't do predator control for field, you're not going to have any left. So really important to do. So, some of that stuff, I know you've talked to Sam Trapman about the Eastern Field Link and stuff. So super great work that those guys are doing and all the other community groups around the country. Yeah,
I've cleared plenty of traps in the Kawika and now a couple along the Hinumaiai. And I was just reading the Sika Foundation report today about the Hinumaiai, and when I was in there, I got squealed at by a lone field, and it's just like, oh, how great is that? And then along the Mohaka, you can sometimes see. I think we saw a group of about six or seven juveniles running around and racing around the river flats. Just like, how cool is that when you've cleared 26 rats going ooh, and then you see fields running around in the river flats. Like, oh, I guess that's why you do it, isn't it? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. They're such characters, those birds. So much fun.
Did you focus on a specific area within Fiordland, or?
So when I was down there, they were working largely on the Milford Track, so the Clinton and Arthur valleys, and then the Cledar, which flows into Milford Sound, were kind of the primary areas that Doc were working on. But we did this amazing study one year. We put VHF transmitters on the back of the FEO on the juveniles to see where they went. And so I think we went out one day and flew. It was about a 6 or 8 hour helicopter flight up and down every river valley in Fiordland, basically. Phenomenal country. And they spread quite a long way, those guys. So, it's great that they're, we're doing this localized predator control in those catchments, but as soon as they pop over the ridge into the next one, then they're, likely to become someone's tasty snack, unfortunately.
Yeah, around the same time in the first lockdowns, I was, my friend down in the Kapiti Coast was looking at a trapping organisation along the Otaki, and that was sort of the hope, was that those rohini field could come down there and nest, and if they put some likely mates in there that were protected, they might sort of extend that reach of the FEO right up that spine of the North Island, which I'm sure there's still hope for, but it doesn't seem to have come to fruition, unfortunately. But I think those traps that they organise have been donated up to Sam's for them to put to good use. So it's pretty cool little bird, cool little tonga to look at ecology and biodiversity. Like, are we having an effect? Or there's a fuel in the river?
Yeah, absolutely. I was super lucky when I was doing my PhD to get up to some of those North Island sites as well. So into the Te Waiti and the Urueras and Whirinaki and down around through Turangi and stuff as well. So that was pretty cool to see some of those spots because they're so different from the Fiordland sites.
Yeah. And so you're sort of saying that's your PhD and then 2014. Who are you today now?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I'm still very much in that kind of conservation space in terms of kind of the work I do. Very much a data scientist, so I don't go outside as much as I used to, which is such a bummer, but often the way it works. But I spend a lot of time kind of analyzing data and making graphs and trying to figure out the answer for other people's stuff. But I guess on a personal level, I'm kind of looking for, I don't know, ways to spend more time outside and do adventurous stuff. But sort of not necessarily in the big classic, go on a massive trip. That's one of the things I found quite cool about this Adventure for Dementia is like, just going out in the Port Hills can be a bit of an adventure. It doesn't have to be epic. I mean, this has turned out to be a bit bigger than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, just making the most of all those opportunities to get outside, really.
Yeah. And, you look at a place like the Port Hills and you're right, you can be at your doorstep and there's a track up to the top and there's vast views, vast horizons and like little pockets of ecology. It's cool going along that summit road and seeing the plantings along each sort of creek and stuff like that. And, what's his name? Professor Norton got sort of high hopes for David, that's right. Yeah, high hopes for little connections of bird life going around the peninsula. Like, to see the small pockets is pretty exciting and like, wow, what can happen within the space of a couple of years will be pretty cool, like.
Yeah. I mean, I live for the day that we see tui back in the city. How awesome would that be? It's it's one of the things I miss about Christchurch is sort of its lack of native birds. But as we get more native bush and things coming back, and hopefully those tuis will come back from the Banks Peninsula, it'd be amazing.
Yeah, no, it's quite funny as well. Like my brother is a surveyor in Christchurch, and then an uncle who works in forestry and looking at plantings. He runs a thing called Trees for Bees, and you see the new subdivisions go in and the cedar plantings and what's being put down, and you go, oh yeah, there's a lot of food there now, and whereas all those sort of British trees weren't necessarily what the tuis were after, and now in the subdivisions you're seeing things that oh yeah, there's some food source going on right now, so it's pretty cool, eh?
Yeah, it's super cool to see how we're kind of changing how we think about putting cities together and stuff. So I mean, the transformation in Christchurch has been amazing too. Post earthquake, it's pretty different to how it was, and it's going to be so much better.
Yeah, it's the sort of the opportunity hasn't been wasted, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and so what's this Adventure for Dementia? Are you fundraising? What's the sort of hope to get out of it? What's the cause?
So yeah, fundraising. I've got I give a little page, Adventure for Dementia, and fundraising money for Dementia Canterbury. So they're a support network for families and patients with dementia. Because one of the things, it's a pretty scary diagnosis for patients and for families because you don't really know what's going to happen in the future. And so Dementia Canterbury provide support in a variety of ways, sort of information about how the disease might progress, access to services, a range of things, access to, say activity days and things for patients and families to go and engage and, still be able to do some of the things that they've always loved. And so they were a real good support network for my aunt and uncle as they were going through that process. So yeah, I really wanted to give something back. I think we're currently sitting at about $6,500
Wow.
from this effort. So I'd love to crack 10 before the end of the year. I reckon we can do it.
Yep, absolutely. Is there any crossover with Laura Ferguson's interest?
They're sort of in the same like physical space.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those guys are kind of working together, I think. Yeah.
different ailments of the brain.
Yeah.
That's where my mum works. So yeah, I was like, oh,
All right. Yeah.
wonder if there's any crossover. She was telling me about elephants. They've done a sort of little fundraiser, and now they're looking at doing people decorating giraffes or something like that. Mum had to look after the elephant in Littleton, make sure no one graffitied it. Yeah, and my daughter and my nieces all cutting out the elephants at home the other day. It was quite funny.
Yeah, classic.
Yeah. One of your videos you talk about dementia affecting young people. Has that sort of message been getting out there, and have you had sort of surprised correspondence with that video?
Yeah, I think, people do tend to think of it as a disease of older people. And I mean, predominantly it is. But my aunt had early onset dementia, and she was in her early 50s, I think, when she, started to see symptoms. She was a bit later when they was, finally diagnosed. But it certainly is an issue. And I think it's becoming more common now, or more recognised, particularly through injuries with sport. I mean, Cal Heyman's a classic example in New Zealand of, a rugby player that's been, probably had a ton of concussions and things through playing sport. And I know there's a woman, I forget her name, but a young AFL player in Australia who's, I think, in her 20s.
Wow.
A woman a lot more susceptible to dementia for various reasons. I think part of that's a hormonal thing, but also I think we're just more susceptible to brain injuries. So yeah, that's super concerning. I think, particularly as more women take up contact sports like rugby and AFL, which is super cool, but it's something that we probably need to be a bit more aware of.
Yeah. And then the sort of awareness around like family histories and prevention. I know I've had Matthew Phillips on here talking about metabolic interactions with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, glioblastoma even, but they're just sort of, things as simple as fish oil, keeping healthy, keeping active, keeping blood flow high, being sociable, things like hearing aids and eye exams, having cataracts done, all those sort of inputs to keep people neuroplastic and neuroactive, to try and delay the onset and keeping them metabolically healthy to delay the onset. Is that sort of thing that the Dementia Trust are working with as well? Or?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely some of the messaging that they're trying to get across. One of the big things that they talk about is, what's good for your heart is also good for your brain. And it's that same thing, keeping active, eating properly, all that kind of stuff is going to delay the onset. And then also, if you do have symptoms, it's going to help, slow that process down. So, just all the things that, your mother's always told you to do to keep up, probably going to apply.
Yeah. You made mention that of your uncle setting up that gazebo. Like, what's this been like for your family?
They're pretty bemused by the whole thing. I mean, I should say that Pete, my uncle that you met, he, Joan was his wife.
Right.
So she, and he's a mad keen road cyclist, and mountain biker. And he rode to Aotearoa at the start of this year as a fundraiser for Dementia Canterbury as well. So it was kind of, his ride was a part of the genesis of my adventure, which is super cool. So he's super stoked, but also thinks I'm bonkers. And my mum came out actually this weekend. She still lives in Tiana, but she happened to be up, and she thinks I'm mad. But she did a lap, so I'm totally stoked. Yeah, it was awesome.
I love the pot kettle back of this. Like, he rides to Aotearoa, but you walking over the bridle pass crazy, and like you say, your father was one of the first up the Kepler. Like,
yeah.
It's all perceived madness, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then what's even better is you've got a whole crew of people that are doing it with you. Like, oh, maybe I'm not so silly after all.
Yeah. Although the more I tell people about what I'm doing, they're like, what? Like, I hadn't really kind of thought about the enormity of what it was going to be until people started going, surely that's not possible. Like, that's ridiculous, that kind of elevation. I was like, Yeah. I don't know. You don't know if it's possible until you try.
That's right. And it's funny, the more you surround yourself with these people, the more you realise that no, this is normal. Like if you sort of
I
look
don't
at,
about normal.
oh yeah,
Just,
or no, not normal. It's not unusual. We'll put it that way. Like
yeah.
you know, you see things like the Reverend Demodian does at Roy's Peak every Friday, and then you see people running the Tarawera. Like I think I'm helping my mate finish the Topo 100 this weekend, and that's why I was off for a run. But the guys, Carl Reed and Simon Cochran, they're trying to run a record for it. And I think Carl's record at the moment is 8:03 for 100 Ks. And so they're trying to do sub 8.
Yeah, wow.
And then, you see Mount Blanc, and that's running up a mountain. And you're like, oh, okay. So there are people out there that do this sort of stuff and fast and seriously.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm certainly not doing this fast. It was a long day out on Saturday. I think it was like 15 and a half hours.
Yeah. And are you using poles?
Yeah.
How's that been as a learning curve?
Not too bad. I use them for Valley Ultra and Kepler, so I'm kind of used to using poles, but it'd be hard and slippery, I think, if you didn't have poles on that route. It's particularly when it's wet.
Yeah. As you said, when it was raining, people came unstuck, literally.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. So where are people finding the Give a Little, did you say, crowdfunding?
Yeah, there's a Give a Little page. Adventure for Dementia is the thing for that. Yep.
And people can link that from your Instagram and the Facebook page as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Easy peasy. I'll have all three of those in the show notes. So if people are listening to this, they can go directly there and also start following your journey as well. There's 2 months to go, and I'd say 15 hours last weekend, longer to go.
Yeah, I reckon December will be 18, 19 hours probably.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Maybe longer. It'd be nice if I could do it in 24 hours, but 24 hours.
No, it's absolutely awesome, Amy. So what I like to hear from people to finish off with is, do you have anything that sort of keeps you in flow, keeps you going? Like something like this, you'll probably find a few mantras or ways to keep on going. What sort of makes things enjoyable and makes them go well and bring you sort of fulfillment?
I think for this, it's just one more lap. It's a little bit like a backyard ultra. You just gotta just one more, nearly done. But I did find a good quote the other day that I really resonated for me. Most of the time, you don't need more information. You just need more courage.
Yeah. And
I am definitely often have the case of imposter syndrome where I'm trying to gather all of the information before I commit to doing something. And just do it. Go out and have some fun and get on with it.
Oh no, that's wonderful. There's one analyst to another that I can relate to that, and that is very, very cool. Oh, Amy, thank you so much. It's cool to talk this out and share this with the world. Like I was walking up the hill and thought that is so cool, and hopefully a few more people hear this and go, oh, that is really cool, and a few more dollars come the way of the Dementia Canterbury.
Yeah, hey, thanks for getting in touch. It was nice to chat.